On Being and Becoming. Written by Jennifer Anna Gossetti-Ference. Summarized by goldreaders.com. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Introduction. Embrace a more genuine way of living and open yourself up to the vast array of possibilities that your life has to offer. Your desire is to lead a meaningful and satisfying life. You understand that this existence is the only one you have, and you want to make the most of it. This understanding may sometimes bring about feelings of unease, as you cannot be certain that the choices you make now will benefit you in the future. This unease lies at the core of existentialism, which sets itself apart from other contemporary philosophies that often engage in abstract speculation. Existentialism returns philosophy to its origins as a way of life. It begins with the individual confronted with the daunting task of determining how to live. These summaries explain how existentialism brings clarity to this essential undertaking by elucidating the concepts of living with freedom, happiness, and authenticity. In these summaries, you will discover why existentialism does not shy away from suffering and even embraces it. The challenges of maintaining authenticity in modern society. How existentialism can contribute to addressing the environmental crisis. Chapter 1. The True Essence of Existentialism. Existentialism was a diverse philosophical movement centered around the concept of human freedom. Today, the term existentialism often brings to mind images of stylish intellectuals smoking cigarettes in trendy Parisian cafes. This association is mainly due to the movement's initial prominence in the French context. The leading figures of existentialism, Jean-Paul Sartre and Simone de Beauvoir, became renowned philosophers with celebrity-like status. Their open relationship and bohemian lifestyle became synonymous with the existentialist way of life. However, this popular perception of existentialism is narrower than the actual scope of the movement. In reality, its core ideas began developing in the 19th century through the works of Nietzsche and Kierkegaard. These thinkers sought to rescue genuine individuality from an increasingly homogeneous mass culture. Other influences on existentialism include the German phenomenologists Husserl and Heidegger, as well as significant literary works by authors like Dostoevsky and Kafka, which explore existentialist themes. Therefore, existentialism is not a single, unified philosophy, but rather a collection of works that address similar concerns. Nonetheless, all existentialist writers agree on a few fundamental principles. Firstly, all existentialists aim to shift the focus of philosophy away from abstract theories and towards the real-life problems experienced by individuals. Existentialist philosophy begins by acknowledging that human beings perceive the world subjectively, from a first-person perspective. It emphasizes that philosophy only holds value when considered from this standpoint. The unique nature of our individual perspectives means that each person's experience of the world is deeply personal and cannot be fully understood by others. You, and only you, have the capacity to make sense of your experiences and determine how to act. Due to this understanding, existentialists tend to reject traditional interpretations of life's meaning found in religious and philosophical doctrines. While they encourage drawing inspiration from various sources, existentialists caution against blindly adopting preconceived answers to life's significant questions. To its credit, existentialism does not provide a prescriptive guide on how to live life. Instead, it aims to guide individuals in grappling with these profound questions so that they can discover their own answers. All existentialists emphasize the importance of human freedom. While life presents circumstances beyond our control, much of it unfolds based on the choices and commitments we make. Although it may be uncomfortable, individuals are responsible for shaping the life they desire and becoming the person they aspire to be. Chapter 2. Rethinking the nature of human existence. Human beings could be more accurately described as human becomings. Let's delve into some complex philosophical concepts. It's essential to grasp the distinction between being and becoming, which has been a fundamental topic in philosophy since its early beginnings in Western tradition. Being refers to the aspect of reality that remains constant and unchanging over time. According to the ancient Greek philosopher Plato, being is associated with eternal forms, such as justice and beauty, which he considered the only true reality. On the other hand, becoming refers to the elements of reality that are constantly evolving. In Plato's philosophy, becoming encompasses the changing world of human perception, which he dismissed as illusory. Plato's prioritization of being over becoming has heavily influenced philosophical thought for thousands of years. However, existentialists uncovered a significant flaw in this perspective: it excludes human beings from the realm of reality. Scientifically speaking, the human body undergoes continuous change and movement. Throughout our lives, cells in our bodies grow, decay, and regenerate. Similarly, our experiences are in a constant state of flux. Human consciousness is a tumultuous and never-ending stream of thoughts, emotions, and images crashing in like waves. Even our sense of self constantly evolves as we age. Essentially, every aspect of our existence is in a perpetual state of transition, from the moment of birth until death. Change is the only reality we truly experience. As a result, existentialism overturned the Platonic ideal. Its proponents asserted that the true essence of human nature lies in becoming. The notion of a fixed being was relegated to the realm of illusion. The entire existentialist philosophy is built on this conceptual reversal. If humans lack a fixed nature, it means we are not confined to any particular identity. Consequently, we are free to become whoever we aspire to be. Chapter 3. A crucial element of true freedom. The necessity of experiencing existential suffering is a fundamental aspect of genuine freedom. The recognition of human freedom reveals its dual nature, with responsibility accompanying it. This responsibility can be daunting, as demonstrated by the anxiety experienced by parents. Existentialist literature and philosophy extensively explore the psychological consequences of human freedom. For instance, in Dostoevsky's novel Crime and Punishment, the character Raskolnikov commits murder based on the belief that, in a world devoid of a higher power, he possesses the freedom to act as he pleases. Paradoxically, his newfound freedom intensifies his sense of accountability, leading him to be tormented by guilt throughout the novel. Existential suffering, however, is not confined to extreme situations. It can arise unexpectedly for anyone. For instance, while sitting on a train, deep contemplation of life might suddenly trigger a sense of despair for not having achieved childhood aspirations. Existentialism's emphasis on suffering has contributed to its reputation as a bleak philosophy. Nevertheless, existentialists do not endorse indulging in suffering. Rather, it should be viewed as a crucial step towards embracing a more affirmative way of living. In contrast, Stoicism diverges significantly from existentialism in its approach to suffering. Stoicism views suffering as unnecessary and promotes self-control as a means to overcome emotional pain. On the contrary, existentialists do not advise resisting or suppressing painful emotions such as dread, anxiety, or despair. They even encourage the cultivation of these emotions, recognizing them as integral to the human experience. Consider the emotion of dread. Contemplating one's own mortality is likely to evoke a sense of dread. Many individuals, in fact, prefer to avoid thinking about it altogether. However, as philosopher Martin Heidegger argued, if one musters the courage to confront their fate directly, they may feel a heightened urgency to make the most of their present life, motivating them to enact changes and take risks. Thus, although embracing existential emotions like dread undoubtedly entails pain, it ultimately fosters a more liberated and authentic existence. Chapter 4. Your Unique Self. Taking ownership of the life you desire is essential for genuine individuality. If you've ever experienced the crowdedness of a subway during your daily commute, you understand the feeling of blending in with the masses. Being part of a crowd has its own distinct way of existing. In the midst of a crowd, we tend to conform to the actions of those around us. Consider this. Have you ever found yourself clapping along in an audience simply because everyone else was clapping? While this may be a trivial example, it raises the question of how much of our behavior is influenced by mindless imitation of others. The crowd represents a mode of existence that characterizes modern society, and it poses a significant threat to anyone seeking an authentic life. Existentialist writers were deeply troubled by the loss of individuality brought about by the mass culture of modern times. Nietzsche, for instance, lamented that people of his era resembled mass-produced goods displayed on store shelves. According to these existentialist writers, genuine individuality is not an innate quality, rather, it must be achieved by learning to think independently, nurturing one's unique personality, and crafting a way of life that aligns with one's true self. If you solely act out of habit, you are living an inauthentic mode of existence, inauthentic because you are oblivious to the freedom you possess. Acting habitually means you are unaware of the true array of possibilities available to you. It is true that your choices may be limited by your circumstances, but you always have options, even if they may not always be obvious. Pretending that you lack choices is merely a means of evading responsibility for the course your life has taken. Authenticity, therefore, entails primarily accepting responsibility for your freedom to choose in every moment. It is also beneficial to regularly dedicate time for introspection, considering different possibilities for action and experimenting with alternative ways of living that deviate from your usual routine. This definition of authenticity may appear abstract, yet it carries tangible advantages. Living authentically allows for greater self-determination and the freedom to live in a manner that suits you. It also means being less bound by negative past experiences and reducing the need for validation from others. Chapter 5. Recognizing each other's freedom. Our freedom is reliant on the acknowledgement and acceptance of others. Some argue that the emphasis on genuine individuality is self-centered, and it is insensitive to claim that everyone is always free when many individuals experience oppression. Existentialist thinkers foresaw these criticisms and addressed them in their philosophy. For instance, Simone de Beauvoir contended that in order to lead truly authentic lives, we must acknowledge the freedom of others. Similar to how we depend on others for our physical well-being, our sense of self also relies on their recognition of our worth and freedom. However, just as others have the ability to acknowledge our freedom as individuals, they also have the power to negate it by treating us as mere objects. René Descartes once described his uncertainty about whether the people he saw outside his window were conscious beings. He proposed that they could be mechanical automatons donning hats and coats. Centuries later, Sartre integrated this insight into his own philosophy. He argued that just as Descartes could perceive the people outside his window as potential objects, it is also possible to objectify individuals. The most extreme manifestation of this is slavery, where one group treats another as objects to be exploited and traded. However, Sartre claimed that even in societies that claim to be free and egalitarian, people frequently objectify each other. For example, when interacting with a post office clerk, it is unlikely that you consider their desires, aspirations, and struggles. From your perspective, they are simply someone who stamps letters. In most cases, this type of objectification may seem relatively harmless. However, it becomes problematic when others objectify us in ways that damage our self-esteem and restrict our freedom. Shame is a common form of objectification. Sartre argued that when someone shames us, they impose a one-sided and negative image of ourselves upon our consciousness. This not only feels unpleasant but also narrows our self-perception, limiting our potential for a fulfilling life. Therefore, shaming others is not an authentic way of relating to them. Authentic relationships involve striving to avoid reducing others to mere objects and instead recognizing them as free and dynamic individuals, much like ourselves. Chapter 6. Relationship between self and world. The integration of the self and the world is emphasized in Albert Camus' book, The Myth of Sisyphus, where he introduces the concept of the absurd. According to Camus, we sometimes feel a sense of strangeness and disbelief about the world we inhabit. In these moments, we seek answers about the meaning of our existence from the world, but it remains unresponsive and indifferent. This existentialist perspective diverges significantly from the scientific viewpoint found in academic journals. While existentialists do not reject the scientific method, they are more concerned with how the world appears to us as humans. From this perspective, the clear distinction between self and the world is challenged. Traditionally, we tend to perceive the world as external to ourselves, as Descartes proposed with the separation of immaterial consciousness and the material world. However, existentialists argue that this strict division does not align with our lived experiences. The self does not exist in isolation from the world but rather engages actively with the objects and phenomena of the world. In our subjective experience, the self and the world form an integrated whole. For example, imagine stepping outside on the first warm day of spring after a long, cold winter. The sunlight and warmth are not only perceived by your senses but also felt throughout your entire being, bringing pleasure. Although you may consider yourself distinct from the external sunny world, it becomes challenging to determine precisely where the world ends and you begin in that particular moment. One might assume that the light of the sun belongs to the world while emotions belong to the self. However, existentialists argue that even our emotions extend beyond ourselves. They radiate into the world, influencing the way objects appear to us. For instance, an apple can appear mouth-wateringly delicious when we are hungry but become uninteresting when we are full. Our emotional relationship with the world alters our perception of it. In the following discussion, we will explore how our emotional connection to the natural world has also influenced its transformation. Chapter 7. The imbalance between humanity and nature. We are in desperate need of establishing a more balanced and cooperative relationship with nature. Since the Industrial Revolution, spanning the past 2 centuries, our connection with the environment has become dangerously skewed. Through extensive production and consumption, we have ravaged natural ecosystems and polluted our planet. Mountains have been flattened, vast forests have been cleared, and our oceans have been suffocated by plastic waste. Moreover, the widespread burning of fossil fuels has triggered climate change, pushing our planet toward catastrophe. Undoubtedly, this is a grave situation. However, one may question the relevance of existentialism in addressing the environmental crisis, as existentialism primarily concerns human existence. Surprisingly, existentialism aligns well with an ecologically conscious way of life. Heidegger, a philosopher closely associated with the deep ecology movement, emphasized the inherent value of nature. He linked environmental exploitation to the dominance of a mathematical and scientific mindset. According to Heidegger, while scientific thinking serves society's practical needs, it tends to objectify its subjects, reducing them to mere objects to be understood and utilized. He argued that this scientific perspective has caused us to lose our original connection with the natural world, perceiving it solely as a reserve of resources to be exploited and plundered. To counteract this, Heidegger advocated for transcending scientific thinking and embracing a more respectful and generous outlook towards nature. He proposed turning to poetry as an exemplar of such an attitude. When someone engages with poetry, their intention is not solely to comprehend the words but also to appreciate their beauty. Heidegger believed that by adopting a poetic approach to nature, we could become more receptive to its intrinsic beauty and awe-inspiring qualities. In essence, living authentically from an ecological standpoint means cultivating a way of life that nurtures harmony and intimacy between ourselves and the natural world, that sustains us. Conclusion. Living in an authentic manner involves interacting with other individuals in a way that recognizes their inherent value and avoids reducing them to mere objects. Instead, it entails acknowledging the profound potential within them. Existentialists have identified three fundamental forms of existence: the self, others, and the world. To live authentically, it is necessary to appropriately attune oneself to each of these. To relate authentically to oneself, one must refrain from closely identifying with any particular self-image and remain mindful of the freedom to make choices. When engaging with others, authenticity entails treating them with the same respect for their freedom that one expects for oneself, avoiding objectification. Lastly, authentic engagement with the natural world involves avoiding the reduction of nature to a mere resource for exploitation. Instead, it involves fostering a sense of harmony by rekindling the wonder and mystery that it once evoked in us. Practical advice. Conduct a thought experiment on authenticity to identify areas in your life where you desire change. Nietzsche formulated a thought experiment known as the eternal return, aimed at helping individuals make more authentic decisions. To undertake this experiment, contemplate the changes you would make to your life if you knew you had to relive it exactly as it is, repeatedly for eternity. Take a moment to reflect: would you alter anything, or can you genuinely claim contentment with the prospect of living your life over and over again, indefinitely?